When my own son looked me in the eye and said I wasn't welcome at the Christmas dinner in the house I paid for, I just smiled. I grabbed my coat, got in the car, and made a call. A single call. By January 1st, they were already 3 months behind on their mortgage, and that was just the beginning of my revenge. Look, you need to understand one thing. I'm not one to make a scene. For 23 years, I worked 60 hours a week building my construction company. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning and come home at 9 at night. All for Michael, my only son. All so that he could have a better life than mine. When Sarah died, my wife, the love of my life, Michael was 17. I could have fallen apart. I could have given up on everything, but I didn't. I worked even harder. I paid for his private college, engineering, $38,000 a year. I ate ham sandwiches for lunch to pay his tuition. And you know what happened? He graduated, got a good job, and met Madison, a girl from a wealthy family in Connecticut, parents who were lawyers, a house on Martha's Vineyard, the kind of people who had never worked with their hands in their lives, people who think money grows on trees. When they wanted to buy a house, who do you think Michael went to? His father, the same father who ate ham sandwiches for 4 years to pay for his college. Dad, can you help me with the down payment? It's just a loan, $50,000. Half of what I had saved for my retirement, but I gave in. Because family is family, right? At least that's what I thought at the time. What an idiot I was. You won't believe what came next. For 5 years, they used me as their personal bank. And when I finally said no, I discovered what these people are capable of. Get ready, because this story will make you angry. It was December 2023, the 21st. I was on their living room sofa, that Italian leather sofa that cost $4,000 and came out of my credit card. The Christmas tree was shining in the corner, all decorated with expensive ornaments that Madison bought at a boutique in Manhattan. Ornaments that cost more than my rent. Dad, Michael said, fiddling with his phone, not even looking me in the eye. About Christmas dinner, I smiled. What time do you want me to arrive? I can bring the turkey, just like I do every year. That's when he raised his head. His face looked strange, red. He couldn't look me in the eye properly. Actually, Dad, you won't be able to come. I thought I must have misheard. What do you mean I won't be able to come? Madison's parents are coming from Connecticut, and they prefer something more intimate. Just close family. Close family. Let me repeat that. Close family. Me, who paid the down payment on the house where they were sitting. Me, who paid for the kitchen renovation where Madison prepared her dinners. Me, who for 5 years sent $2,500 every month to help with the mortgage. I was not close family. Michael, I said, my voice lower than usual. Are you telling me I can't come to Christmas at the house I helped buy? He glanced at Madison, who was fiddling with her laptop, pretending not to hear. She didn't even lift her head. Not even a, "Hi, Tom," when I arrived. For 2 years, this woman had barely spoken to me. Dad, it's nothing personal. It's just that her parents are different. They have certain expectations. And you know how it is, your presence can make the atmosphere complicated. Complicated. My presence made the atmosphere awkward, in the house that I paid for. It was there that I realized that love has an expiration date, and mine had expired. Sitting on that couch, watching my son exclude me from Christmas, my mind started doing the math. You know that moment? When everything becomes clear all at once? When you realize how stupid you were? Down payment on the house? $50,000? It came out of my retirement savings. Kitchen renovation when Madison felt the original kitchen lacked personality. $22,000. Credit card bill I'm still paying off today. Monthly mortgage payments. $2,500 per month for 5 years. Do the math. $150,000. $150,000? That's without counting the emergencies. Madison's car that broke down and she needed a new one. $12,000. The backyard that needed landscaping because the neighbors were going to judge. $8,000. The trip to Europe that they deserved because they worked so hard. $15,000. $257,000. More than $250,000. Money I sweated to earn, carrying bricks, mixing concrete, waking up before sunrise. And you know what I got in return? Your presence can make the environment complicated. I looked around the room. The 75-inch TV I bought them on Black Friday. The Persian rug Madison saw in a magazine and fell in love with. The The silk curtains that cost $3,000 because they make all the difference in the atmosphere. I paid for everything. All for people who now found me too awkward to sit at the Christmas table. That's fine, Michael, I said, getting up from the sofa. I understand perfectly. And I understood. I understood that I had created a monster. That I had raised my son to be a man who excludes his own father to impress his rich mother-in-law. But they still didn't know who they were letting go of. They still didn't know that I was no longer the same man who silently paid the bills and was grateful for the crumbs of attention. They were going to find out. At the front door, while I was grabbing my coat, Madison finally spoke to me. "Tom," she said, without looking up from her laptop. "You understand, right? My parents are very traditional. They value certain things. Certain things." "What kind of things, Madison?" She sighed, as if she were explaining math to a child. "Well, they're Harvard graduates. Dad's a partner at a law firm in Manhattan. Mom's an art curator. They speak fluent French and travel to France every summer. Do you understand what I'm saying?" I understood. What she was saying was that I, Tom Peterson, son of a welder and a cleaning lady who built my company with my own hands, wasn't refined enough to sit at the table with the Harvard boys. "Madison," I said, still calm, "who's paying the mortgage on this house?" She finally looked at me. "Tom, this isn't about money." "No? Then what is it about?" Michael stood up nervously. "Dad, please don't complicate things. It's just dinner." "Just one dinner," I repeated. "At Christmas. At the house I pay for. With the family I'm not refined enough to meet." Madison slammed her laptop shut. "Look, Tom, I'll be direct. My parents know important people. Governors, senators, CEOs of companies whose names you can't even pronounce. When they come to dinner, it's an opportunity for Michael to make connections, for our careers to grow. And am I getting in the way of that? You're a good man," she said, as if throwing a bone to a dog. "But you don't understand art, literature, international politics. You're going to sit there in silence, or worse, you're going to try to participate in conversations and well... Are you going to embarrass me?" Silence. It was at that moment that I understood. I wasn't a father. I was a sponsor. A silent investor who was supposed to send money and remain invisible. Like those guys who pay to have their name on the stadium but never actually play on the field. Close family. What a joke. I arrived home and sat at my dining table. The table where I had eaten alone for the past 5 years, ever since Sarah died. The table where I planned all my business deals, where I made decisions that involved hundreds of thousands of dollars. I grabbed my laptop and opened the folder I called Michael. All the bank statements, all the transfer receipts, all the invoices for things I paid them for. 5 years of documents. 5 years of generosity that turned into obligation. First page. Transfer of $50,000 to Michael's account. Date, March 15th, 2019. Reason, down payment on my son's dream house. Last page. Transfer of $2,500 to Michael's account. Date, December 15th, 2023. Reason, monthly mortgage assistance. 6 days before being dismissed from Christmas. I called the bank. "I want to cancel an automatic transfer." "Of course, Mr. Peterson." "Which transfer?" "Monthly transfer of $2,500 to Michael Peterson's account. This transfer has been active for 5 years. Are you sure you want to cancel it?" 5 years. The clerk didn't even know it, but she was summarizing my life. 5 years of being an idiot. 5 years of believing that love buys respect. Absolute certainty. "Canceled, Mr. Peterson. Anything else?" "No, that's all." I hung up the phone and stared at that folder. $257,000. The price of discovering that my son saw me as an embarrassment. But you know what's funny? The next day was December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas. And they still had no idea what gift they were about to receive, because canceling the money was only the first step. The second would be much more painful. They were about to discover that humiliating those who pay your bills has consequences, and those consequences arrive very quickly. December 23rd. My phone rang at 7 in the morning. Madison. "Tom, I need a favor urgently." A favor. 2 days after excluding me from Christmas, she wanted a favor. This woman's audacity knew no bounds. "What kind of favor, Madison?" "My parents arrived this afternoon, the 3:30 flight. Michael had to work late. You know how it is, end of the year. Could you pick them up at the airport?" Let me see if I understand. I wasn't refined enough to sit at their table, but I was qualified enough to be their driver. "Madison, I said, calmly sipping my coffee. Are you asking me to seek out people who don't want to meet me? Tom, stop being dramatic. It's just a short drive to the airport. An hour at most. Dramatic. My wife excludes me from Christmas and calls me dramatic when I question why I should become her parents' chauffeur. Which flight? American Airlines, Flight 447, Terminal B. Their names are Charles and Patricia Whitfield. They will be waiting at the exit. Whitfield? Of course. Even the last name sounded like old money. And do they know I'm going to pick it up? I said I would send someone. They don't care who it is. Someone. I had been demoted from father to someone, from investor to Uber driver. Okay, Madison, leave it to me. Oh, and Tom, wear that blue shirt you have, the nicer one. And get there about 15 minutes early. They hate waiting. She hung up. Not even a thank you. Not even a please. Just orders for the driver. I stared at my phone and started laughing. Really laughing. Because I finally understood the game. They wanted me invisible to the family, but essential to the service. I grabbed my coat and left the house. I was really going to pick up Madison's parents at the airport. I was going to meet in person the people who thought I wasn't classy enough to share the same air as them, but not in the way Madison expected. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. American Airlines Flight 447 had just landed, and I was at home, watching television, drinking a cold beer, and eating popcorn. My phone started ringing at 4:10. Madison, of course. I let it play. 4:15. Michael. I let it play. 4:20. Unknown number. Probably the Whitfields themselves, trying to figure out where the driver was. I let it play. At 5:30, I was reading the newspaper when the phone calls turned into a storm. Madison was calling every 2 minutes. Michael was sending desperate texts. Dad, where are you? Madison's parents have been waiting for 2 hours. 2 hours. In an uncomfortable airport armchair, carrying luggage, probably paying expensive parking. The same Whitfields who were too refined to share a table with me. 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Michael showed up at my door. He didn't even knock, he just walked right in. His face was red with anger. Dad, what the hell are you doing? Madison's parents are stranded at the airport. Abandoned? I said, without taking my eyes off the newspaper. What an exaggeration. They have Uber, taxis, rental cars. Rich people always find a way. You promised to go get them. I didn't promise anything. I said, you can leave it to me. And I really did. I left the decision not to go to myself. Michael stood in my living room, trembling with anger. Dad, this is childish behavior. You're embarrassing our family. Our family. Michael, I said, getting up from the sofa. What family? The family that excluded me from Christmas? The family that finds me too embarrassing to meet the in-laws? That's different. Really? How is that different? Explain it to me, son. How can I be family when you need a driver, but not family when it comes to sitting at the table? He opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out. You know what's really embarrassing, Michael? It's having to explain to two rich strangers that the man who pays for their house can't have dinner at the same table. That's what's embarrassing. That was the first time in years I'd seen my son unresponsive, and I was only just getting started. 8 o'clock at night. I was heating up a frozen lasagna when 3 cars stopped in front of my house. Michael, Madison, and a black BMW I'd never seen before. They knocked on the door as if it were a police raid. I opened the door and found 5 people on my porch. Michael and Madison, whom I knew, and 3 strangers, a man in his 60s, with perfectly cut gray hair, wearing a suit that cost more than my car, a woman of the same age, with the posture of someone who had never worked a day in her life, and a younger guy around 40, who seemed to be some relative of the Whitfields. Mr. Peterson, said the man in the suit, entering my house uninvited, we need to talk. And you are? Charles Whitfield, Madison's father. And this is my wife, Patricia, the famous Patricia. She looked around my room as if she were in a favela, a look of disgust, barely disguised. Mr. Peterson, Charles continued, what happened at the airport today was unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Would you like to sit down? I offered, pointing to my old sofa. We're not going to stay long, Patricia said, the first thing she'd spoken since they'd entered. Her voice had that air of superiority that only rich people seem to have. You kept us waiting for 3 hours, Charles said. 3 hours at an airport. We missed our dinner reservation. We had to pay an $80 taxi fare. And all because you decided to throw a childish tantrum. A childish tantrum. Mr. Whitfield, I said, remaining calm. You are in my house. I suggest you lower your voice. I'll lower my voice when you explain to me what kind of man abandons elderly people at an airport. Elderly people. The guy was 65 years old, not 90. The kind of man, I said, who gets excluded from Christmas at the house he pays for because he's not refined enough to meet his in-laws. Silence. Charles looked at Madison. She looked at the floor. Ah, said Patricia, finally understanding. So that's it. You're upset because you weren't invited to dinner. The way she said upset, like a dog that didn't get a treat. That's when I realized they knew. They knew I was financing Michael and Madison's lives, and they approved of the exclusion. The war had officially begun. December 26th. The day after Christmas, I spent alone eating pizza and watching Netflix. My phone rang at 9 in the morning. It was Dave, my business partner. Tom, man, have you seen Facebook today? No. Why? There's a post about you. It's circulating in city groups. I opened Facebook on my laptop. I didn't have to search much. Right on the first page, a post by Patricia Whitfield with 350 likes and 87 comments. What kind of world do we live in today? Yesterday, a man in his 60s, who should be setting an example of responsibility, abandoned 2 elderly people at an airport simply because his ego was hurt. My husband and I came to spend Christmas with our daughter, and her father simply disappeared when he offered to pick us up. We waited for 3 hours without explanation, without an apology. Do people like that still exist? Who put their own pride above the safety of others? How sad. 350 likes, 87 comments from people I didn't even know, calling me irresponsible, a scoundrel, a coward. People sharing the post, saying they knew men like that. My reputation being destroyed by people who didn't even know my name. But the worst was yet to come. In the Springfield residence group, where I had been a member for 10 years, Madison had posted, "Guys, I urgently need a recommendation for a geriatric psychologist. My husband's father is going through a very difficult time. Erratic behavior, impulsive decision-making, episodes of anger for no reason. Yesterday he abandoned elderly people at an airport, and today he's acting like he's done something heroic. We're worried and want to help, but he refuses to listen. Does anyone know a good professional? Geriatric psychologist. Erratic behavior, anger episodes. Madison had turned me into a senile old man who was losing his mind. 540 likes. 130 comments from neighbors offering help, recommending doctors, telling stories of relatives who went through the same thing. In less than 24 hours, I had become the town's crazy guy, the troubled father who was worrying the goody two-shoes family. I closed my laptop and stared at my room, at the photos of Sarah on the wall, at the house I built with my own hands. Did they want a reputation war? They were going to have a reputation war. But first, I needed ammunition, and I knew exactly where to find it. I spent the next 3 days like a detective. I didn't leave the house. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't reply to messages. I just researched. I investigated. I gathered evidence. Madison's Facebook page was a goldmine. 5 years of posts showcasing her lavish lifestyle. Photos of her renovated kitchen with the hashtag blessed. A picture of her new car. My husband is the best. Photos of her European vacation. We worked so hard, we deserve this. We worked. She didn't work. She was a lifestyle blogger with 240 followers. I took screenshots of every post, every expensive trip, every unnecessary purchase, every display of wealth, everything dated, everything documented. Patricia Whitfield's Instagram was even better. The woman posted about her entire life. Dinners at restaurants costing $500 a person. Wines costing $1,000, jewelry, handbags, shoes that cost more than a used car, and always writing about family values and the importance of gratitude, family values. The woman who thought I wasn't classy enough to sit at her table. Charles Whitfield had a LinkedIn profile. He was a partner at a law firm in Manhattan, specializing in corporate law. One photo of him at a charity event was captioned, "True wealth lies in the family relationships we build." Family relationships. The man who broke into my house to intimidate me. I printed everything. I organized everything into folders. I created a timeline showing exactly how my money financed their lavish lifestyle while they treated me like an employee. Entrance to the house. March 2019. First photo of Madison in the new house. March 2019. Kitchen renovation, July 2020. Madison's post about our dream kitchen, July 2020. Madison's car, September 2021. Her post thanking my wonderful husband, September 2021. Trip to Europe, June 2022. $15,000 that left my account. 53 photos on her Instagram celebrating. Everything paid for by me. Everything used to humiliate. On the night of the 29th, I had a complete dossier. Not just of the expenses, but of the hypocrisy. People talking about family values while excluding those who paid the bill. Now, I needed an audience, and I knew exactly when and where to find one. New Year's Eve. Madison always threw a New Year's Eve party. All of Springfield's high society. 100 people, all reading Facebook, all opinion leaders. They are all about to discover the truth. December 30th. I went to FedEx Kinko's and printed 200 copies of my dossier. 200! Each one with 50 pages. Bank statements, social media screenshots, photos of the house, receipts, everything organized chronologically. The girl behind the counter looked at me curiously. "Is this for a company, sir?" "No," I said. "It's for justice." On the cover of each dossier, I wrote, "The truth about the Peterson-Whitfield family. How an elite family financed their luxurious lifestyle with other people's money and then humiliated those who paid the bill." Below is a photo of their house, taken from Zillow, with the amount of the down payment I paid written in red, $50,000. I went home and organized everything like a general preparing for battle. Numbered files placed in brown envelopes, with the name of each party guest handwritten on them. How did I know who the guests were? Simple. Madison had posted the list on Facebook in a closed group called Springfield Social Elite. She didn't know that my fake profile, created 2 years ago to monitor Michael's social media, was approved for the group. Guest list, 120 people. The city's mayor, owners of major companies, doctors, lawyers, judges, journalists. Everyone who mattered in Springfield. Everyone who had seen the posts about me being a crazy old man who abandoned elderly people at airports. Everyone was about to discover the rest of the story. On the morning of December 31st, I dressed in my best suit, the same one I wore to Michael's wedding. That day, I was proud to be a father. Today, I was proud to be a man who doesn't accept humiliation. I loaded 3 boxes of envelopes into my truck and drove to their house, the house I paid for the party I unknowingly financed. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The party started at 8, enough time for the bomb to explode before the guests arrived. I parked in front of the house and watched. Waiters coming and going, flowers being delivered, bar stalls being set up. Everything very fancy, everything very expensive, everything paid for with my own money. I rang the doorbell. Madison opened the door wearing a dress that cost more than a month's salary. When she saw me, her face went white. "Tom, what are you doing here?" "Hi, Madison. I brought some New Year's gifts for your guests." Behind her, Michael, Charles, and Patricia appeared. The 4 of them looked at me as if I were a ghost who had risen from the dead to haunt them. "Mr. Peterson," said Charles in that authoritative voice, "you were not invited to this party." "I know," I said, carrying the first box. "But the guests will want to see what I brought." I went inside the house. They didn't try to stop me. I think they were too curious to know what I was planning. The room had been transformed. Flowers everywhere, elegant lighting, waiters preparing trays of champagne. Everything perfect for impressing high society. I placed the first box on the coffee table, the same table I paid for 2 years ago when Madison decided the old one didn't fit the room. "What's in there?" Michael asked nervously. I opened the box and took out an envelope. "The truth," I said, handing it to him. "Something you forgot to tell your friends." Michael opened the envelope. I saw his face change color as he read the first few pages. The bank statements, the transfers, the amounts. "Dad," he whispered. 120 envelopes, I said, pulling more from the box. 1 for each party guest, with all the documentation from the last 5 years. How much I paid, when I paid, and how you treated me in return. Patricia snatched an envelope from my hand and began to read. I saw her swallow hard when she got to the part with the screenshots from her social media, All those posts about family values, side by side with photos of her flaunting things I paid for. That's blackmail, said Charles. No, I replied calmly. This is transparency. You told your version to the whole city. Now it's time to tell mine. Madison tried to grab the box. You can't distribute that. It's defamation. Defamation? I laughed. Madison, everything here is public documents. Bank statements, posts from your own social media. There isn't a single lie in this envelope. That's when Charles tried to intimidate me again. Mr. Peterson, you're making a serious mistake. I have connections in this city. I can destroy your company. Can they do what? I interrupted. Exclude me from Christmas? They've already done that. Turn me into the town's crazy person? They've already done that too. Call me irresponsible on social media? They've already done that as well. I stopped and looked into his eyes. The difference is that now the whole city will know why. It was 5:30 in the afternoon. The first guests began to arrive. I was strategically positioned at the entrance, greeting each person as if they were family. Good evening, Dr. Williams. It's good to see you. Look, I have something here that you'll want to read. Envelope handed over. Margaret, how is the family? I brought you an interesting book to read. Another envelope. Judge Harrison, what an honor. As a family law specialist, I'm sure you'll find this fascinating. Another envelope. Madison was desperate, trying to intercept the guests. Guys, ignore Tom. He's going through a difficult time. But I was smarter. In each envelope, along with the documents, I included a letter explaining, Dear friends of the Peterson-Whitfield family, recently, false stories about my behavior have been circulating on social media. As a businessman who values the truth, I feel obligated to present the complete facts. The attached documents show that, over the past 5 years, I have invested $257,000 in this family's life. I paid for the down payment on the house, renovations, cars, trips, and $2,500 a month in mortgage assistance. In return, I was excluded from my own family's Christmas because I didn't have enough refinement to meet my in-laws. When I refused to continue serving as their personal driver, I was publicly defamed. The documents speak for themselves. I leave it to you to judge who really acted irresponsibly. Sincerely, Tom Peterson. Within half an hour, half the party was reading the envelopes. I saw groups forming, people whispering, glances being cast toward the Peterson-Whitfield family. Dr. Williams, who had been a friend of Charles's for 20 years, approached him with the open envelope. Charles, is this true? Did this man really pay the down payment on your children's house? Charles's silence was the answer. Margaret Chen, owner of the city's largest restaurant chain, was showing the envelope to other women. $257,000. And they excluded him from Christmas? Judge Harrison, who had already convicted dozens of cases of domestic abuse, shook his head as he looked at the bank statements. This is systematic financial exploitation. That's when the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life happened. An entire party of rich people turning against the hosts. Truth is a force of nature. Once it's out, there's no stopping it. 8 o'clock at night, the party that was supposed to be the social event of the year had turned into a courtroom. 120 people, the elite of Springfield, looking at Peterson-Whitfield as if they were criminals. This is unacceptable, said Eleanor Patterson, the mayor's wife. How could you accept so much money from a man and then treat him like an employee? Patricia tried to defend herself. You don't understand the whole situation. Tom is very intense. He invades our family space. He doesn't respect boundaries. What limits? Asked Dr. Williams. The man paid for the house. What limits was he violating? The right to dine at the table he financed? Madison was crying in the corner of the room. Michael was trying to explain to anyone who would listen, but no one wanted to. Charles had disappeared, probably hiding in the bathroom. The sweetest moment was when Sarah Mitchell, the social columnist for the local newspaper, approached me. Mr. Peterson, may I ask a few questions? I'm writing a story about financial abuse in family relationships, and your case is enlightening. An article in the newspaper. The same media outlet they used to destroy me now wanted to tell my side of the story. Of course, I said. But everything you need to know is in the documents. By 9 o'clock at night, the party was empty. 120 people had left, carrying envelopes and a new perspective on who the real villains of the story were. I was the last one left, alone in the room with Michael, Madison, Charles, and Patricia. The four of them sat on the couch like defendants awaiting sentencing. "Father," said Michael, his voice breaking, "what do you want from us?" "I don't want anything from you," I replied. "For 5 years, I wanted love, respect, a place in the family. You've made it clear that I don't deserve any of that." "Tom," Madison said, "we can talk about this. We can work it out." "Solve it?" I laughed. "Madison, there's nothing to solve. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences." I picked up my empty box and walked towards the door. On my way out, I turned around one last time. "By the way," I said, "this month's mortgage payment is due tomorrow. $2,500. You know where the bank account is." And I left the house I paid for, forever. January 15th, a month after my performance at the New Year's Eve party. I was having breakfast when my phone rang. "Michael." I let it play. It played again. I let it play again. On the third attempt, I answered. "Dad." His voice was broken. "I need to talk to you." "About what, Michael?" "The house. We're having problems. Without your monthly help, we can't cover the mortgage. We're 3 months behind." 3 months. December, January, February. "And what does that have to do with me?" Silence on the other end. "Michael? Dad, can you come back and help? Just until we get organized?" Unbelievable. After everything, he still thought I was the family's personal bank. "Michael, you told me I didn't belong in the family, remember? That my presence was awkward?" "Dad, that was a misunderstanding. Madison was nervous about her parents. It wasn't anything personal. Nothing personal. Son, excluding me from Christmas is personal. Defaming me on social media is personal. Treating me like a chauffeur is personal. Dad, please, we're going to lose the house." And there it was, the stark truth. Without my money, they couldn't maintain their standard of living. All those posts about success, all that ostentation, it all depended on my hard work. "Michael," I said calmly, "you're adults. Adults solve their own problems. But Dad, good luck with the mortgage." And I hung up. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Dave, my partner. "Tom, have you seen Zillow today?" "No. Why?" "Michael's house is for sale." I opened Zillow on my laptop. There it was. House in Springfield. Needs to sell fast. $320,000. $20,000 below market value. Desperate sale. I recognized the signs. I had already bought several properties from people in financial difficulty. 3 days later, price reduced. $310,000. 1 week later, accepts offers, $295,000. 2 months later, sold. They lost their house. The dream house I paid for turned into the nightmare I predicted. Justice is in no hurry, but when it arrives, it is final. March. 3 months after the forced sale of the house, Michael showed up at my door one Saturday morning. He wasn't in his car. He probably sold it to pay off debts. He arrived by Uber. When I opened the door, I barely recognized my son. He had lost weight, his hair was messy, and he had deep, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept properly in months. "Dad," he said, "may I come in?" I let him in. He sat on my couch, the old couch that I didn't need to replace because I wasn't spending $2,500 a month on someone else's life. "Father, I need to ask for your forgiveness." I waited for him to continue. "You were right about everything. Madison, her parents, the way we treated you. It was all wrong. And why are you telling me this?" He lowered his head. "Because I lost everything. The house, Madison's respect, my friends. Because I discovered that when the money runs out, people show who they really are. And who is Madison, really? She left me," he said, his voice almost a whisper. 2 weeks after we sold the house. She said she didn't marry me to live in a rented apartment. She said I was weak because I couldn't provide the lifestyle she deserved. The lifestyle she deserved. With whose money? Her parents. They disappeared. After that party, after everyone in Springfield found out the truth, they went back to Connecticut and never spoke to me again. Patricia blocked me on Facebook. Charles doesn't even answer my emails. Elite family. What a joke. And now what do you want, Michael? He looked me in the eyes for the first time in months. I want my father back. I want to fix what I broke. I want to be his son again. "Son," I said, "you never stopped being my son, but you stopped being my priority. And money isn't going to fix that. I know. And I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a chance to prove I've learned my lesson." I looked at that 32-year-old man, sitting on my sofa, broken by the weight of his own choices. My boy, who once dreamed of being like his father, and who became everything I despised. What lesson did you learn, Michael? That family can't be bought. That respect can't be sold. That I had the best father in the world and almost lost everything because I wanted to impress people who never truly loved me. His words hit me in the chest like a punch, not because they were false, but because they were too true. Michael, I said, forgiving you is easy. Trusting you again will take time. He nodded. As long as you need, Dad. I'll be here. 6 months later. Michael was working 2 jobs to pay for a 1-bedroom apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but it was his. Earned with his own sweat. Madison had married a guy from Boston, an investor 40 years her senior. I found out by chance when I saw the wedding photo on Patricia's Instagram. 5 months after divorcing Michael, she was wearing a veil and bridal gown again. The love of her life, until the money runs out. Charles and Patricia never returned to Springfield. Their reputation in the city was ruined. Eleanor Patterson told me they sold their house on Martha's Vineyard. Financial problems, the rumors said. Michael would come to have dinner with me every Sunday. Not because I paid his bill, but because he wanted to be there. He'd bring dessert, always something he made, not bought. And we'd talk, really talk, like father and son. One Sunday he asked, "Dad, do you really forgive me?" "Michael," I said, "I forgive you because you are my son. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without anger." "And you remember without anger?" "Most days, yes. But it still hurts to think about how you treated me. It still hurts to remember the Christmas I spent alone. It still hurts to know that you chose to impress strangers instead of honoring the one who raised you." He nodded. "Dad, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for these years." "No," I said. "You're not going to try to compensate. You're going to live better. You're going to be a man who honors his family. You're going to be someone your son can be proud of. His son." Michael didn't have children yet, but when he did, he would know what to do. Because now he knew what not to do. The truth is this: family cannot be bought. Respect cannot be sold. And dignity is not negotiable. I paid a fortune to learn this lesson. But in the end, it was worth every penny. Because I discovered that when you stop being a doormat, the right people stay, and the wrong ones reveal themselves. And there's no amount of money in the world that can pay for the peace of mind that comes from being respected for who you truly are. 1 year after the humiliating Christmas, December 1st, 2024. I was in the store buying Christmas decorations, something I hadn't done in years, when I ran into Dr. Williams in the tree aisle. "Tom," he said with that big smile. "How's life?" "Well, doctor, much better. I heard that Michael is working in construction now, following in his father's footsteps." It was true. After losing his office job, companies don't like employees who become a laughingstock in town. Michael had come to work with me. He started by carrying materials. Today he was already learning how to calculate budgets. "He is learning the value of honest work," I said. "And Madison, I heard she got married again." "She got married, got divorced, and now she's getting married again," I laughed. "Her 3rd suitor in 12 months. The woman has a knack for finding open wallets." Dr. Williams shook his head. "You know, Tom, that New Year's Eve party changed a lot in the city. People started paying more attention to families living beyond their means. How many successes are financed by exploited relatives?" It was true. My story had become a case study. 3 families in Springfield had gone through similar situations after my story circulated. Children cutting off manipulative parents. Parents ceasing to support ungrateful children. "Dr. Williams," I said, "may I ask you something? At that party, what made you believe me and not them?" He thought for a moment. "The documents helped, but what convinced me were the numbers. $257,000 over 5 years isn't aid, Tom. It's sustenance. And whoever supports someone shouldn't be treated as a burden. It's that simple. The truth needs no elaboration. Furthermore," he continued, "the way you handled the situation. Calm, documented, without hysteria. Desperate men shout and make a scene. Real men gather evidence and let the facts speak for themselves. I left the store with a 6-foot tree. The first Christmas tree I'd bought for myself in 5 years. Michael was coming to decorate with me on the weekend. A new tradition we were starting. Traditions based on mutual respect, not financial obligation. If you've made it this far, it's because you recognize something familiar in this story. Maybe you're Tom, someone who gives, and only receives contempt in return. Maybe you're Michael, someone who woke up too late to what really matters. Or perhaps you know a Madison, a Patricia, a Charles, people who confuse generosity with weakness, who think that whoever pays the bill should remain invisible and grateful for the crumbs of attention. Let me tell you something I learned at 63 years old. Dignity is non-negotiable. No matter how much love you feel for someone, no matter how much money you have to give, no matter how much you want to be part of a family, if that family doesn't value you, you don't belong there. And that's okay. It really isn't. I spent 5 years of my life trying to buy a seat at a table where I would never be welcome. I spent $257,000 funding the contempt of people who saw me as a walking ATM. Today, my son is coming to dinner with me because he wants to be here. Not because he needs money, not because he feels obligated, but because he learned something when we talk. Because I laughed at my own bad jokes. Because he discovered that having a father you respect is better than having a father who pays all the bills. If you are experiencing a situation like this, being used, disrespected, treated as an inconvenience in the life you finance, I want you to write in the comments, "No one will use me anymore." Write. Because when you write, you make a public commitment. And a public commitment is harder to break. If you know someone who is going through this, share this story. Because sometimes we need to see our situation told by another person to understand the magnitude of the humiliation we are enduring. And if you are the son, daughter, son-in-law, or daughter-in-law of someone who finances your life, take a moment and think, when was the last time you treated that person with the respect they deserve? When was the last time you called just to see how they were doing without needing anything? Because money runs out, patience runs out. Unconditional love? That also has an expiration date. Don't let them win. Christmas 2024. 1 year after the humiliation that changed my life. Michael arrived at 2 in the afternoon, carrying an apple pie he had made himself. He didn't buy it at an expensive bakery, nor did he order it from a fancy pastry shop. He made it with his own hands, in the kitchen of the humble apartment where he now lives. "Dad," he said, placing the pie on the table, "I want to give you my Christmas present." "Michael, we agreed that there wouldn't be expensive gifts this year." "It's not expensive," he smiled. "It didn't cost anything, but it's worth everything." He handed me an envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter. Okay. A year ago, I was a man who let his wife and in-laws exclude him from Christmas. Today, I am a man who understands that family is built with presents, not money. You taught me how to work. You taught me how to be honest. You taught me that dignity is worth more than status. I forgot all that for 5 years, but you never gave up on teaching me. Thank you for letting me come back. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for proving that a real man doesn't need to shout to be respected. Merry Christmas, Dad. This is the first of many we will spend together. By choice, not by obligation. Your son, Michael. I finished reading with tears in my eyes. Not from sadness, from victory. The victory of someone who recovered the son they thought they had lost forever. "Michael," I said, "this was the best revenge I could have. Not against you, but for you. Having my son back is worth more than all the $257,000 I lost." We had dinner at my usual table. We talked about work, about the company's projects, about his plans to one day own his own construction company. A father-son conversation, not a creditor-debtor one. At 11 o'clock at night, when Michael left, I was alone in my room looking at the Christmas tree. It wasn't the most expensive tree in town. It wasn't in a magazine-worthy house. It didn't impress anyone important, but it was mine. Bought with my money, decorated with my joy, illuminating a life I chose to live with dignity. My phone rang. A message from Michael. "Dad, thank you for the best Christmas of my life. I love you." I replied, "I love you too, son. Welcome back to the family." The truth is this. True revenge isn't about destroying the person who wronged you. True revenge is about building a better life than the one they tried to take from you. Arrogance has an expiration date, but dignity is eternal. And that, my friends, is priceless. If you enjoyed this story about how a man regained the respect and the son he thought he had lost, subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, Have you ever had to teach someone to value you? How was your revenge for dignity? Because everyone deserves to be respected at the table they help pay for. And those who don't understand this, well, they'll learn the hard way.